It's like deja vu. Dave Kersner here, also known as Squids. I'm going to have Gavin Lurssen joining me momentarily to talk about Lurssen Mastering Console and music making. And here he is. Let's see. Let's bring him in. Gavin Lurssen. This will work. I'm feeling good, like it's going to work. There he is.
We did it. We did it. So, if we had said on our Insta story 2:20 sharp, we'd be right on time.
Yeah, took us 20 minutes to get, but I think it's, I don't know what the reason was. Maybe I just updated my Instagram, so.
Yeah, when you said you updated your OS, so the Instagram was probably out of date.
I did I'm not stupid. I mean, 100% stupid, just a little.
You're not stupid in that way.
I updated my Instagram right after I updated my iOS. By the way, I said earlier, I hate updating my iOS. Because it's like they always move things around. It reminds me of like when I was a kid and we had a housekeeping lady who really didn't clean. She just kind of moved my stuff around, and it looked cleaner. But it was like, well, where's my, there's.
Yeah.
It's right next to the Bo Derek poster. Anyway,
Give her your age.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah. I updated if I had to. I realized there was a new update, so I updated it, and now it's working. So whatever, Voodoo, we're back. And so basically, okay, so we've both been doing our live streams. This is like a joint one, I suppose you could say. So you've been doing them twice a week. I've been doing them twice a week also with IK.
Yeah.
Every Thursday we do a studio time with Squids. Squids is my nickname for those who don't know. And we give away a product from IK Multimedia, which is cool every time. And then also on Friday, I do sort of music hang with the guy named Mark Menji from Metal Allegiance, who does some work with IK. And he does Mondays, and then we do a hang on Friday. But you've been doing it now, talking to different people about mastering and different things. I haven't tuned in. So what do you have a specific time that you do it, or do you just pop on and start doing it, or what's your thing on that?
I've been popping on and doing it, just with various producers and engineers, and I'm kind of there's so many people that we've come into contact with in our relationship that the product we did with IK, so many people that I would never come into contact with, because out of all the people making records, there's so many people that want to come in, and the budgets just don't support it. So the software is a way for us to really connect with people, and all that touring around the country we did with you guys. So because I'm in touch with such a larger audience now, what I'm trying to do is connect with producers and engineers that I work with, and talk about, just talk about the trauma that we're all suffering right now, and the new ways of working. And there's so many issues that have come up, and they're very fascinating topics. And you can spend, Insta chats go for an hour before they cut you off. So we do these hour episodes. I did one with Rafa Sardina where we talked just about the issue of latency, and how the software companies are actually seeing an opportunity in what we're suffering today, because music's going to have to be made another way. You cannot put a group of musicians in a room right now and make a record. So what are the Grammys going to look like in a year, when you consider this year is going to be a year of making music without a group all in the same room? So
let me ask you something. So you're talking to Rafa, and Rafa does the music for Westworld. He did Game of Thrones, right?
No, you're thinking of Ramin Djawadi.
Oh, okay, sorry. But Rafa is the engineer.
Rafa's producer engineer. Yeah, we do all of Ramin Djawadi's work, all at Westworld and Game of Thrones and stuff like that. Okay. So for sure we do with that. I think you just confused the two names. But Rafa's top shelf guy in the industry.
But all those guys work. So sorry, I confused it with them. But just it brought up a point. And I'm curious if you know the answer, if you talked about it at all. So those guys that compose and also, mix and send you for mastering the soundtracks for popular shows and everything. How, are all these shows going to come to a halt? I mean, because, you know, how can they shoot with social distancing and lockdowns and all that stuff? And then is that
Yeah,
going to change their work? Like, are they going
yeah,
to not have shows to score?
it's a major trauma for everybody in the industry. They have shut down television production, but there's another side to that coin. We're all living in a place where the only thing you can really do is consume information. So, you know, it's funny. My dad put up a post the other day. He likes to complain about this, but then comes to the realization that Anne Frank lived in this attic for 761 days without an internet, without Netflix, without a way to communicate. And then all of a sudden the complaints go away when you realize 2 years of this. So what we have in by comparison is
Luxury.
we're in the same boat, but what do? We consume information. So all of these services, Netflix, Amazon, they're all needing fresh content updated continually. So they're doing it in various ways, and that work is continuing for us. We just did some work for Westworld, in fact, with Ramin Djawadi, and movies are continuing. It might just be that the projects that have started are finishing, you know, and we're still new enough that we're in the process of that. But what's really interesting to me, you know, going back to that thing with Rafa, is this thing of latency, because there's so many reasons for projects to start. There's so many reasons to stop and start. There's so many ways to make music now that are different than throwing, you know, like an Americana album of people all in the same room. That's not happening. How's that going to be reflected in the artistic output of the world in the next year? You know, and so we touch on these various topics just to help this other audience, the audience that's using IK products and the LMC, our console, and all that stuff. How can they best use it in this environment, you know, and what's going on? So I'm just letting them, through me, get access to these professionals and in discussions about this. So I wanted to talk to you. You wanted to talk to me. So yeah, we got a joint. We'll interview each other, you know, and it's great to see you again.
You too, buddy.
I
Miss you.
wonder if anybody here knows that we used to be roommates back in the olden days.
No, not everybody knows that.
That's how we met.
That's how we met. Yeah. Well, I had this crazy house in Los Angeles. I had the lease on the house. It was on the top of Mulholland, and it was like a box on stilts that could sway. It swayed during hurricanes, earthquakes. I live in Florida.
Okay.
Same thing. That's our version here. And
you live in Florida now. You're used to the hurricanes.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, to be honest with you, when this pandemic thing first started here, everyone started buying the kind of stuff you buy for hurricanes. And there's like a panic. So everyone's used to the panic. But you see, with earthquakes, it's a little different. It's just, and I lived in LA for 10 years, you know, back then when I lived with you and other places there. And it's just sort of like, you have no warning. And it's just like, okay, we're having an earthquake, run for the doorway. But like here, there's like a week of fear built up, and then, you know, fight to the death for not toilet paper, that's a new one, but like, let's say water, bread, food, things that you
gasoline.
And you know, so we're sort of used to it, but it's also kind of like I'm like, this isn't a hurricane, people. But then again, it is a sort of you know, the wiser ones are prepared early, especially to be able to stay home, because it's not that easy. I've been able to stay home. I actually only went out. I don't know about you. Well, I know a little bit. I want to talk about that, but
I'm full on quarantine.
Yeah,
I'm full on quarantine, and I've got a console in my house. So
that's
you know,
awesome.
I'm set up to work at home now. You know.
I do too. I have this console. Look at this.
Hey, I know that. Hey, that console is this console.
I know, that's so cool. We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
But before we do, let's
Yeah.
talk. So, okay, so I've been staying home. I went out yesterday just to get some food, just some fresh veggies, you know, but from Whole Foods and whatnot. So,
yeah.
But I noticed you like riding motorcycles. So have you at least gotten out on your motorcycle? I guess that's okay, right?
I have got out a couple of times, but here's the thing. There's nowhere, if you go for okay, so we all do these meditation things that bring us peace And one of the things that I like, as you know, is to get the wind on my face and take a ride and get out there. And, you know, I live in Southern California, so I mean, the expanses of land are, you can just go forever and be in the wilderness and all that. Um, so when you ride around in a populated area, no, there's nothing open, so there's no place to stop and take a leak. When you're in the wilderness,
Wow, what
it's
do you mean?
cool.
The
It's
wilderness
cool.
is your toilet.
Well, the wilderness. But if you're around Malibu or something, you know, so they really do want you to stay in, and you do have to respect that. But you can also go crazy. I try to get some exercise at home. I do a lot of yoga and stuff like that. But you know, I do like to get out when I can, and you can go out on a motorcycle and bring some food in a cooler bag. So all you have to touch is the
Wait, by
gas pump.
food, do you mean like catch some squirrels? Are we there yet? Is it the zombie
No,
apocalypse?
no. I cook some salmon and make some quinoa, and I put it in a little cooler bag with a
Oh,
cooler brick.
you're so such a California guy now. You were originally
Well, no,
from.
no. You should wait till I'm going to say the next thing, and then you can say that. It's organic.
Oh yes, of course. Now let me ask you something. So you grew up in South Africa, right?
Right.
Did you eat organic quinoa then?
Well, that
What
didn't have
happened?
toxins in it. It was so
Roadkill
long ago.
cookbook.
It was so long ago that you know, this was back before the Great Flood. Because we're old, in case nobody's noticed. I think between you and I, we have a combined experience level of over 100 years.
I'm sorry. Oh my God, roadkill cookbook.
I don't think we're solving anybody's recording needs right now, and
No, that's tough.
I was hoping to really give some solutions to people that are stuck at home, but it is nice to catch up like this. Roadkill cookbook.
Well, we only get an yeah, that's too good. No, I mean, first of all, I've made the mistake of you know, this it's the time to binge shows, but probably one of the worst shows to binge right now, which I never saw before, is The Walking Dead. So
Yeah.
I watched 4 seasons of The Walking Dead. I think I've had enough. First of all, it's really gory, and I'm not into the gore, but also it's just kind of like, okay, reality check. This is not the zombie apocalypse. You know, there's no zombies. There are people
Well,
maybe, you know, fighting
okay,
for.
but I have a question about this. What is the deal with toilet paper? I have yet to understand this toilet paper craze. It's
Well,
insanity. What? Why are people buying toilet paper? Is that stopping production? Are they going out of business? Like,
I
what's
don't
the
know. I
deal?
don't know why they can't make more. Aren't they prepared for business? I mean, there's like a limit. There's only so many people and so many times you can use
And
it. Just
and look, and they
make
don't want us
toilet.
to get the virus, but yet they're not supplying us with hand sanitizer. What's the deal with that?
Well, I'm not so
You know,
sure
if
even hand sanitizer even works because uh, what I've heard is that you put it on your hands, but you need to wash it off. It's not enough to just kind of put it on there and leave everything there. So they say bacterial soap is better and just wash vigorously anyway. And there's plenty of soap. By the way, I was just thinking about that. I have like, you know, a couple packs of bars of soap. Nothing crazy. You don't have to hoard more than you can do. I'm alone, so that's enough for me. I can barely get through one. I mean, I shower every day. I can barely get through one thing of soap every 2 weeks or a month. I don't know. I mean, so that'll last you a while. Anyway,
well, that
enough
explains a
of this.
lot, Dave.
Um, so, and you're not here, so you don't have to smell me. No, I smell wonderful. Anyway, let's talk about some audio stuff. So let me ask
Yeah.
you something. Something I've always wanted to understand better. Inside Lurssen Mastering Console is a recreation of your analog console that you have behind you.
Right.
You have, of course, at the studio. And I wanted to just ask a little bit. So, okay, I'll just tell people in general, if you haven't, first of all, if you haven't tried Lurssen Mastering Console, go to ikmultimedia.com. You can download it. Look for Lurssen Mastering Console, Lurssen. Download it. You can use it for free for 2 weeks. You can literally master your record thanks to Gavin and IK Multimedia for free, and just to try it out and see how you like it. And the general philosophy, which we've talked about enough, I just want to briefly say the idea is it's a recreation of his analog rig. presets are made of different chains that give you a head start or an overall sort of, this is what we do at Lurssen Mastering for this style of music or this style of music, you know, pop, country, EDM, whatever it is. But you can also use those preset chains and setups for other styles. But it's not a full, like, under the hood, full access to every component. But you do have the sound of every component. So I wanted to just ask you actually about the components. So for instance, I have pop rock up, and I just wanted to ask you, so like, what do you use? So it says tube equalizer at the first part of the chain. Which tube equalizer do you use in hardware, and why?
I use, I have my go-to gear, and then I have options beyond that. And when we designed this console, we designed an aggregate. We went through and we used our ears based on an aggregate of a whole being greater than the sum of its parts. And we had to do that because when you put a chain together, it's got so many components in it, and if you don't spend 20 years designing that chain, it can be a hodgepodge and it can mess you up. So what I did, working with Doug Sachs in the analog domain, cutting vinyl and all that, is I, over the course of 15 years that I spent there and another 10 years on my own, accidentally discovered putting pieces of gear in the chain. That 2BQ that's in the front of the chain is actually an accident that was discovered because we used to patch our De-Esser in the front of the chain when we used to work off analog tape, because that's where it made sense to be for a very specific reason, which would then send the de-essed signal into the gear. But what we did was we had a solid state EQ, and I tried a 2BQ, and our tech accidentally patched it into the De-Esser spot, and he caught himself a day later. But I'd already done some listening, and I really liked it, so he put it in the right spot. Didn't feel right, so I put it back in the accidental spot. This is one story of many, many stories that really take years to go through to come up with something that you just know is one thing, you know. And so
That's cool.
So a go-to EQ for
What
me.
piece of gear is it?
So a go-to piece of gear for me is an EAR 825. I think that's the model number, 825Q, behind me here. So, it's it's easy. Everybody models everything and they put it out there. We didn't do that. We put everything together to create one whole. And like you said, you cannot go in right now. Although there is some talk of this, and there's a lot of requests for this, going in and EQing individual modules within the LMC. Right now, we set an aggregate. We put it together. That 2BQ that's in there is highly influenced by the EAR, the Tim DePavicini EAR 825Q, which is a brilliant EQ.
And then
the De-Esser comes later.
Right. So, but again, like we've taught, first of all, for everyone to know, what I'm trying to do for the IK side, and then you can interview me after, since we're sharing the interview here.
Okay.
But I've talked to Gavin, other people have talked to Gavin. There's videos. If you go to IK Multimedia's YouTube channel, if you go actually on the Lurssen Mastering Console page, you can see all sorts of explanations about Lurssen Mastering Console from Gavin and also his partner, Ruben Cohen, another multiple Grammy-winning mastering engineer. But I do want to talk about the gear because I think it's important. So to understand it, that's something we don't normally get to talk about. So what's the solid state equalizer? What's that based on?
Again, these are aggregates. I don't want to sit there and say that any one piece of gear is modeled, because it's not like that. It's a conglomeration. So, I use I really enjoy the GML. Let me get the model number on that. That's not here. Actually, that's in the other studio. This is the one I'm using at this house is a Prism MEA2. It's how these pieces of gear feather into one another. I suppose what we're looking for in the solid state is we mainly go for the low end. We mainly go for punch and quickness in the low end. In the 2BQ, we kind of push open the high end, but that gets
Interesting.
controlled by the De-Esser later. So we're getting a nice, juicy, flavorful openness with a tight low end, you know. So that now we're starting to go down that road, and in terms of how we combine that EQ and how we design the LMC, you know.
So that's interesting. So basically, with the 2BQ, you're getting a nice smooth top end that you can boost, and then even though you're boosting it for the whole song because it's a stereo mastering of the whole song, you can rely on a solid state de-esser at the end to tame it when it's the sibilance is too much. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's one of those years-long accidental discoveries, which is when you combine a 2BQ and a solid state EQ, before you even deal with compression, and you can have multiple compressors too. If you put a de-esser at the end of the chain and a 2BQ at the front, I find, and this went into modeling the LMC, this was very much a part of it. I find that when you get that 2BQ in the front and you really crack stuff open, it gets a little edgy. So when you then push the signal through all the gear like that and have it all encompassing, and at the end clamp down that high end with a de-esser. So using a de-esser so that you can open up an EQ, not if it's sibilant, but using it for a different purpose. You're actually using it as a high frequency limiter because you're using a 2BQ to crack your music open. It clamps it down in a very beautiful way, and then from there it goes into a solid state EQ, and you can start getting your punchiness and all that stuff there. So that's, you know, if you listen to our body of work, you'll see that. You'll see a nice punchy, lush, rich, open sound, and that's what that is, you know. So, you know, every album's different. We go into different places for each album, but there is kind of a go-to. There's an aggregate, and that's what that is. So the GML 9500 is an EQ I really like for punch, because it's very, it doesn't have a color. It's, you to go in and out of it. It does the job, but it doesn't come out with a flavor. It's just clean. So you need something clean if you're going to put it next to something that's got saturation. So it's beautiful, and the Basilic is the same thing, you know.
I want to ask you about that, a bit more about that EQ and EQing in general, but just to understand the chain. So let's say, and I just picked a pop rock chain. So here, I'll show everybody. So this is the chain. I don't know if you could see it. And of course, when you click up here, that's where you can see the chain. And you have a few controls underneath here, such as threshold and makeup gain. But so in this pop rock preset chain, it's going through the tube limiter after the two EQs. So you said, like, for instance, just to recap, the tube EQ at the top, at the front would be a little bit more for high end. This is in general. Then the solid state would be a little bit more for the low end. Then you run into a tube limiter, a solid state de-esser, and then a solid state compressor. So for the de-esser, just to understand how it works, what would be the frequency that the de-essing? So typically for sibilance, a lot of times people use a de-esser. Of course, there is a de-esser in T-Rax. Just to let everybody know, IK Multimedia's T-Rax is a mixing and mastering suite with individual compressors and EQs and things like that. There's over 40 modules. Same thing, you can use it for free for 2 weeks. And there's also a free version called T-Rax 5CS, which literally works forever for free. So you might as well at least get that from ikmultimedia.com. Brought to you by, no, but just to let you all know, that's just if you want to get into mixing and mastering. And that comes with a de-esser in there. But so here, there is a built-in de-esser. And de-essers, I use de-essers. Many people use de-essers typically for vocals when there's sibilance to get rid of it. And I would say the center frequency that you de-ess for vocals is maybe around 5-6K, I guess. 6-7K, somewhere in there.
No, it's much higher than that. It's much double that.
Or for vocals.
For any application that we would use it would be.
What frequency would you use it? That's what I'd like to know.
15 and up, you know, in the air areas. Oh, yeah, very high up, very high up. You could go down as low as 10, but 10 would be considered low. So we're not going into those areas because we're trying to get richness and punch and you know, all the music really lives in the mid-range usually. All the other
I'm glad I
areas are for
asked because I
support.
didn't know that. That's really
Yeah,
interesting. So like
yeah.
basically 15K. De-Esser.
Well,
So you're using a
but
de-esser in a different way, very
I'm
different.
using it as a high frequency limiter, and only specifically because I've got a tube EQ on the front end of the chain. So, so you have to look at it that way, and you cannot have one without the other, and you actually cannot have the rest of the gear either. It's every piece of gear is dependent on the other. It's sort of like the
Okay.
countries of the world right now. They're all
Yes.
dependent
Now,
on each other.
you know what? So I just wanted to say this because, and I'm so glad we're getting into it at this level, dude, because we've talked about it. And to understand the real value of Lurssen mastering console, some people are like, well, I could just, if I'm an engineer, I know what I'm doing, man. I can pull up a compressor and a limiter and a a multi-band compressor and a de-esser and do all these things. And that's true. And you can with T-Racks and with other things. But what you get with Lurssen mastering, and this is something I learned because I actually with Lurssen mastering console is I've used Lurssen mastering console, Gavin and Ruben mastering albums that I've produced, which you could still do. You could send them tracks, so that has not changed, right? You guys are still mastering away
Oh
over
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So,
Well,
but
as you can see,
yes, but if you're on a
yeah,
budget or you want to just master, or you want everything you do to have mastering quality,
right.
um, you use Lurssen Mastering Console. And what you get is all these years of expertise and trying things on records. That's it. And some of them huge hit records, or let's say the John Lennon box set, or Eric Clapton, or the Foo Fighters, or Robert Plant, the Alison Krauss record, which won a Grammy. It's like,
Yeah,
this is, and Pink Floyd, and all these things over the years, it's been used on that to the satisfaction of all these different producers, T-Bone Burnett, all the people that hired Gavin Lurssen and Reuben Cohen,
yeah.
and their team. So it's like, and then not to mention starting with Doug Sachs, which for those who don't know was those Audio Labs. Was it called Audio Labs?
The place where I worked with Doug.
Yeah. What was the original, the name of it? It was something Labs.
The mastering lab.
Mastering Lab, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was like the high-end, respected audiophile place to begin with. And so that's where Gavin comes from. Anyway, so to understand these chains, the way they're thought out to do different things, it's kind of like a nice way to just be like, look, I'm going to just trust that the experts have put together some really cool chains, and all you have to do really is use your ears. You just put it through the chain. I remember, and this is actually kind of how Lurssen Mastering Console even started. Gavin was busy. I thought it was Eric Clapton, but who was it? Who were you busy with when I needed you to master something? Remember, was it you two?
Yeah, it was somebody. It was somebody. It was somebody of that.
Somebody more important than me.
In that world.
And they were busy.
I don't remember at the
They
time.
were busy at the time.
I think was it maybe it was Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. I saw somebody just post that. I think it was that. I think it was Josh Homme. We were working on something with him.
It was somebody that I couldn't bump. I couldn't ask for, even if I asked for a favor. And he said to me at the time, this was several years back, he said, well, before LMC existed, several years before that even. And he said, we don't have time, we're booked. But he said, I could run your tracks through the console. That's kind of like half of it. Just the sound, the glue. And, I could run it through the things that I would normally do on your thing, but I don't have time to sit there and tweak it. And I was like, like, wouldn't it be great? And then Gavin and I we're talking about it, like, wouldn't it be great if this was just in software, recreating that? Because that's what IK Multimedia does. And I introduced Gavin to the developers at IK, and now we have LMC. But specifically, at least for that sort of initial thing, like, gosh, I wish I could just run my tracks through this console. But then on top of that, they created all these intelligent presets, so it can be tailored to your music. And then you have a few controls of the EQ, and there's the push input drive. There's the push, and then there's the input drive, which you can automate as well. But let me ask you some more questions, and then you can ask me stuff. I just want to ask you one more thing. So when you're mastering someone's track, do you sometimes find that you have to master sections of it, like this section will have the De-Esser on or this EQ boosted, but then the chorus doesn't, and then you just splice it together? You ever have to do that?
Yeah, often. Um, I'll tell you one reason. There's a multitude of reasons for this, but I'll give you one reason that I think a lot of these people will relate to. Are you saying something? I see your lips moving, but I don't hear what you're saying.
It sounds like a Pink Floyd song. Lips
You
move,
know, you were talking
I
about Pink
can't hear
Floyd.
what you're saying.
Before I go there, I'm going to give you some information now. But you know, you and I, just to tell the audience out there, we were roommates in the early '90s, while we were just figuring out our game. You know, what we were going to do, and I got this job with Doug, and we started working on all this Pink Floyd stuff, and it was amazing to me because you and I are complete fucking Pink Floyd junkies. We know every note on every album. We know everything there is to know about Pink Floyd. I've got signed memorabilia by them from having worked with them. And I showed up one day, and Roger Waters was standing there with Doug, and they were just chatting matter of factly about, you know, what was going on the album, like it was nothing. And that's when I started to break it down and realize that we're all just independent artists making music. Roger Waters is no different than anybody else making a record right now, and looks for the same solutions that we're talking about here.
You
And
know what? Actually,
and
just on that note, on the Pink Floyd note, my pinch me moment was I somehow the stars aligned and I produced a sample library with Nick Mason, the drummer of Pink Floyd. And not only did the stars align for that, but I got Alan Parsons to engineer it, who was the original engineer for Dark Side of the Moon.
Back to the Moon, right?
Happened to be just in England at the same time. And I just said, like, and I know Alan, I've worked with Alan before, and I said, Alan, would you want to do this? He's like, yeah. And I said, Nick,
Well,
do you want to do this? And they hadn't done it.
I remember when you negotiated that.
Side,
I remember
right?
that.
So it was like, we're doing it. And we recorded it on an EMI console like they had at Abbey Road, although we didn't do it at Abbey Road. I don't want to say why, but there was more gear at this other studio that was like back then. So we used all the same equipment. And then there was this one moment, and I was totally professional. I wasn't like a fanboy or anything weird or whatever. But there was this one moment, and I've never said this, I don't think, where Nick was like, Dave, what do you think? Is that okay from the live room? And then Alan turns to me, he's like, yeah, Dave, what do you think? And I'm like, they're asking me.
What do I think?
But like well,
I had the same thing. I had the same thing with Roger Waters and James Guthrie. They were like, what do you think? And I'm like,
think of that. And you're absolutely right. And it was a beautiful moment because in that moment for me, not that I didn't know this already, but it was just drove it home, was this idea of, you know what? You could put these guys on a pedestal if you want, but we're really just all musicians. We're all engineers.
everybody's the same.
We're the same.
Let me tell you something.
Music,
So
you're recording sounds. It doesn't really matter. And the irony is now even more are we in the same boat because no one's recording in those studios, sadly. I think Abbey Road closed down their doors. They hadn't done that in decades.
well, let me tell you this. So James Guthrie was in charge, and I think still is in charge of the Pink Floyd catalog. So he's in there with Roger and Doug and me. The four of us are in there, working on, I think it was, we did a lot of work with him, but I think this particular album was Amused to Death, one of his solo records.
Oh, yeah.
The one with Jeff Beck. And James Guthrie mixed that impeccable job. Just a beautiful album. And so we walk out the back of the building at the end of our workday, and there's a little tiny incline. And I got used to parking my car on this little incline, and Roger's standing there just looking around. He goes, we mixed the wall in this building. And so I'm like, okay. So then he goes, yeah, this is where we did the skidding for Run Like Hell. And I know everything about these albums. He doesn't know I'm such a fan. And so I said, what do you mean? So he goes, oh yeah, I went and rented a station wagon from the Hertz rent-a-car down the street, and they didn't have another car, so I got a station wagon. Russ Castillo, who is part of this, who's one of my Facebook friends, he just hosed down this area right here, and he's like standing there pointing to this area that we're standing in front of, and we just peeled the car out a number of times, and James captured it, and that's the car skidding on Run Like Hell, and they made it sound like they were running through a garage, but it was really just that one spot. I mean, I could tell you so many stories. You want to hear a couple others?
Yeah, but it's my turn. So
But
Alan
wait, you've been
Parsons.
talking. It's my
Okay,
turn.
so yeah,
Let me
no,
tell one more.
dude, we should. No, you know what we'll do? We'll do like muso stories on our personal uh, Instagrams because these are fun.
All right.
I think other people would really enjoy it. We'll get back to the audio, but I will say this.
Well, you had a question for me, which I haven't even got to yet. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, real quick, Alan Parsons did the same thing where we were, and actually, there's an interview. I should post. There's more of that interview, but Alan says the footsteps on Dark Side of the Moon was him going to the echo chambers and just walking around in the echo chambers at Abbey Road.
I've heard that. I've heard that. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
there's so many cool stories like that. Oh, I mean, look, I was going to tell you a couple other Pink Floyd stories, but we can do that later. We'll do another one because I got so many of them. But one of them, just to tell, I'm going to tell one just because what it does is it equalizes the audience here. It tells everybody that we're all the same. And so James pulls out, this was before Pro Tools and everything else. So we were redoing the wall, resurfacing the wall for a vinyl or something like that. And that whole album is crossfaded. And the way that they used to make crossfades is they would play 2 tape machines into one other tape machine and hit record, make an edit piece, cut it into a big reel.
Really?
So yeah, if you listen to the wall, you'll hear a number of edits. Now that I've told you that, you'll actually hear them. But
wow,
you're not really conscious of them until that. So sorry for that. But but it's actually pretty cool to know this. But anyway, so listen. So you know that famous thing where Roger did a backwards message and everybody read into it.
I ruined my record player doing the thing
Dude,
backwards.
Everybody was trying to find the truth into that. And James and I were in there late one night, just the 2 of us, and he goes, "Here, flip this reel over." So we start hearing the music backwards and then Roger talking. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, I just put the mic on and we turned the tape upside down and Roger sent a message. So if you consider the lore that comes about from these huge historic recordings, when you go back to the day of it, it's just a few people in the room trying to get things done. And I recently watched this thing on the first rocket that took guys into orbit and people into the moon. And they said the same thing. They said, but at the time they were doing all that stuff, it was like duct tape and Velcro and let's get this done. But later it gets looked at as this grandiose thing. And it's the same thing with music. So, we've got all these stories. I'll tell one other. I got one other and then I'm going to go do your question.
I want to hear them. Go for it.
I'm going to just say one other. So Dark Side of the Moon, right? Since you brought it up. My favorite album of all time. There is not a better album made than Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, a rock and roll album.
In my top 10 for sure.
I had an argument with Chris Lord-Alge about this album because he considers it a prog rock album. And I know you're a prog rock star in your own world. Check out Dave Kersner Band, everybody. But I don't believe it's a prog rock album. I think it's a rock and roll album. So we resurfaced that, right?
I'm on Chris's side on this.
It's on 2, well, I knew you would be. So it's on 2 reels. And everything is crossfaded. So we were the first ones to make it go to CD because I'm that old. And what we had to do before Pro Tools existed, there was Sound Tools, and I'm sure you'll remember Sound Tools. What we had to do is we had to take that tape and if memory serves, it was 1/4 inch, 15 ips, and there were no tones. I think there were no tones, so we couldn't align it. And what we had to do is we had to get the tail of side B and the tail of side A and the intro of side B into Sound Tools. We had to crossfade them, so make a digital edit and crossfade them, spit it back out to a piece of analog tape and cut with a razor blade that into the 2 reels. Now what that meant is you had to take the tape itself off 2 small flanges and put it on 1 big reel. So James Guthrie leaned over to me, and this was routine back in the day. We used to do stuff like this every day, so it was nothing. And James goes, "Hey, can you just grab me a fresh tape box?" So I grabbed a fresh tape box, a big reel, empty reel, so we could do all this work and put the Dark Side of the Moon on this big reel. And he goes, "Hey, would you just mind writing out the legend?" And the legend, for those that don't know, is the songs and the title of the album and us. So without realizing what I was doing, I just scratched it out like you do on these tape boxes. It's all scratchy stuff. I even crossed out something I made a mistake on and wrote it out. And I didn't realize it till later, but I did know to take a photo of it, because now The Dark Side of the Moon, that reel, which is, I think, the best rock and roll album ever made, the handwriting on the legend is mine. So that if there's anything I've left in this business when I'm done with this, which I'm not done yet, it's that.
You realize that several hundred years from now, aliens are going to be sort of like excavating to see what we left behind. Sorry. And they're going to find
I'm
that.
just going to fix my screensaver.
This is one of their greatest accomplishments. Here's this Gavin guy on here.
Cool, you know,
man,
anyway, now, what was the question that you posed to me 25 minutes ago?
Well, first, I'm going to interject with something for the audience, and then I want to answer a few questions from the audience that Rachel has pooled for us. But and one of them was that they wanted to hear more Pink Floyd stories. So there you go. You got some of that. We'll hang some more, tell some more war stories. I think we could probably make just a Gavin and Dave show only, and we could go on forever. But so
well, we were all roommates, so we got a lot of catch up to do.
Mastering console to somebody right now, and all you have to do is answer this relatively easy question. This is the first one. I'm going to give away two. I said I was going to give away two of these because we had technical difficulties before, and I felt bad. So here's the first question. You don't have to be the first person to answer it, but you do have to answer with the correct answer. And then Rachel or Peter, IK guitarist, who's tuning in here, whoever that is, one of the two, is going to tell me who the winner is, picking randomly. Ready? So here's the question. The question is very easy. Name one type of gear that would be in the chain of Lurssen Mastering Console under the hood. One type of gear. I won't even say, you don't even need to name the brand. Just tell me a type of equipment that would be modeled inside the chain of Lurssen Mastering Console. We've mentioned.
What happens if I tell you?
Yes. Okay. We have one right answer so far. It's really easy. If you wanted to get fancy, yes, that's good, Matt. Very good.
Matt.
Very good. So yeah, good. Cat's got it. Okay, good. Donnie's in his element. Cool. So we've got both Peter, also known as Buscemi. Yes, Ryan, great. So Slow Healer, very good. Yeah, got some good answers. Only answer once, just to be fair. Okay, cool. We got some good answers. Somebody's going to win $199 piece of software here in a matter of seconds. It's kind of fun. It's fun to be Santa Claus, I have to say. People generally like me because I give away stuff. I don't know if they like me otherwise. Okay, the winner. We have a winner. Congratulations, Slow Healer. You won.
Oh, I know that. That's Jess. I know Jess.
Well, congratulations, Jess.
You know what? I'll give one to Jess. I've got some licenses. I'll get one to Jess. Give it to somebody else, and I'll get her one because I know her. I can email her a license.
Gavin, you trying to like? Okay.
All right, you do it. I won't try to control it. Give it to Jess. Give it to Jess.
Okay. So Jess, you won. Sorry, Gavin's just like my Santa Claus, twin. But let IK give it away. We'll give you one, Jess. All you have to do is just DM us at IK Multimedia on our Instagram, and Rachel will set you up with a cereal today, a little bit after this broadcast. Okay, so we'll go on. Now, all right. First of all, was there a question you wanted to answer, or do you want to ask me a question?
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
All right, this is a very important question. I think everybody wants to know this. How much of your work are you doing in your pajamas?
I thought you were going to ask that. First of all, I did post that as a joke, I don't see the point in wearing pants anymore. And I'm sort of kidding, but in a way, it's sort of like, at least jeans. I wear jeans all the time. And I'm like, what's the point if I'm not going out? So I wear like boxers, and I was thinking about just wearing boxers for this, but I am wearing shorts just in case, I don't want to like, shock anyone or, but no.
Yeah, because we cannot unsee that,
What?
We cannot unsee that once you tell us that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, first of all, the only thing people see these days right now is like the shoulder up, more or less, wearing my Sound of Contact t-shirt, which by the way, Gavin mastered. I have a band with Phil Collins' son called Sound of Contact, and anyway, that's what the shirt is. But otherwise, that's all you see. Yeah. So no, there's not a long answer to that. I could go on, but no. How about you? Are you wearing pants?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what's interesting, there's so much. I'm trying to go through the exercise of predicting
That's funny,
how life is going to change coming out of this thing, and I've already predicted. I've made a couple of predictions. One is that these Zoom cocktail hours are going to stick because it's a way for people to get together and all this stuff. But on a personal level, here's what I think is going to stick for me. I wear Uggs every day now, and I'm going to wear Uggs every day. You don't know what Uggs are?
I'm not hip like you, dude. I don't.
Dude, here's an Ugg. Can you see this?
Oh, it's ugly. What the hell's that?
They're so comfy. They're sheepskin, man. Sheepskin feet, and they're cool. They're like they're California. Hey, they're California. You might remember when you were one of us, but Uggs are it, man. Just go out in Uggs all the time. So when this comes out, when this is over and we get back to things, I'm wearing Uggs all the time. That's just going to be the deal for me.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it's pretty hot here in Florida. I'm barefoot most of the time. And just, and also, I don't know about you, but my, Jess is laughing. So everyone's like, what the Ugg? Anyway.
I tuned on to get some audio solutions, and they're talking about Uggs. What the fuck?
No, well, anyway, but what about your hours? Have they changed? Because for me, I've completely flipped my schedule. It's actually kind of bad, where I'm just kind of like staying up. I think I left like Walking Dead of all things on, like, and then it ends on a cliffhanger. I'm like, oh, well, let me just see what happens next. And then before you know it, it's 7 a.m. I'm like, I gotta go to sleep. And then I wake up at like 2. I just woke up a few hours ago, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get to work. But the thing is, though, and this is kind of a good thing. I mean, like everybody, you're right. The world is changing already, and I think it's going to change after this, especially in terms of thinking of ways to be able to work from home in case there's a situation like this. Not to mention, this could go on for a while. So it's good but we're mainly here talking to fellow musicians, engineers, producers, songwriters. And I would say for me, it's not that I'm used to spending a lot of time in isolation because working on music requires you to be in a studio. I have actually a separate studio that I pay rent on that I don't use right now. It's more of a storage unit while I just brought it home so I could stay home where my fridge is and, everything else. But my toilet paper stash and all other survival.
That's like gold now.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I can't believe I thought of this early enough. But I think, so for me, I'm still working on a lot of stuff. And like you were saying earlier, which I thought was interesting, anything that you've already recorded out in the wild, whether it's with other people, if that's a thing, or live, or shows that have been recorded, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of production, post-production, and stuff that is being done to maximize. I think there's a certain extra appreciation for, let's say, live concerts. I'm mixing actually like 5 different live concerts, also mixing it for other bands. And this is something that, I was just supposed to go on this cruise to the edge with Yes. It's a progressive rock cruise. Yes, Steve Hackett, my band, Dave Kersner Band, Fernando Perdomo, Durga McBroom, and Lorelei McBroom from the McBroom Sisters, backing vocals for Pink Floyd, who play in my band, another Pink Floyd thing. And I'm going to have them on as a guest also, or Durga. But, and that was canceled. Of course, it was a cruise, and it would have been like just a few weeks ago. And I was like, I'm glad it was canceled because, like, man, you don't want to be on a death ship right now, stuck in, not allowed back in. But anyway, so all those shows are canceled, and so nobody can see. A lot of people have been playing live. I'm actually going to do it. I think, did I see you noodling around a little too? Were you playing or no?
A little bit.
Some guitar? Yeah, good.
Yeah, not on social media, but it's a great meditative thing to do. Yeah.
So I might do that, but I think one of the cool things that I generally think this way anyway, because my band, I also have a band called In Continuum, with a lot of star players, you know, in the music world, Marco Miniman and Miniman, and a bunch of other great players. And it's tough for us to get to tour around the world anyway. But these days there are fans in different parts of the world. So I like to capture the few shows that we do anyway on video and audio and put it together. So with surround and everything, so people can actually kind of in their living room experience a little taste of what the music sounds like when it comes alive. And
Yeah.
now to me, that's content is gold. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
not only can people from around different places we never toured not see us, but even the places we do, like England or Germany or here, and no one can see us because there are no shows.
Yeah.
So I think
streaming, content. It's a world of content now. So you know, this is actually what we started talking about before we started being old buds and roommates and reminiscing and going down memory lane and talking Pink Floyd stories and all this. You know, we've lived an amazing life, you and I. We've really done a lot of stuff since we were roommates, and we're now back together over this plugin that we're doing in partnership. But you know, that's really what we started this discussion with, which is, you know, it's going to be a content-driven world, because even when this is over, nobody's going to want to go stand in. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm too old to know, but I wouldn't want to go stand at Coachella right now and be in this crowd knowing this virus lurking, you know. So I think, you know, maybe some people will not worry about it, but I think there's going to be, that stuff's going to thin out, and people are going to take in their content through a screen. And anything that comes along that helps enable that, to not only create content to distribute it, and content is going to become more of a thing, but also using a screen, using the same technology to integrate with each other and interact and create content. And that's why I'm particularly interested, and we can talk about this another time because I think our time's going to run out here, but this whole latency issue. You're a partner in a software company. I'm interested to see how software companies are going to talk about that and you know, really deal with it in terms of people trying to make music as a band anymore, like an Americana record where everybody kind of has to be in the room at once. So you know, at the moment, people will collaborate in all the other ways we talked about, but I see it as really being a thing.
I don't know. I think that in terms of collaborating, the way it's been working is the way that it, you know, will continue to work, which is, and I prefer it anyway, which is sending tracks. You can send stems, what are called stems, which is like, let's say, sub mixes, either the full song minus the track that someone's supposed to do, or if you want to give more flexibility, you can stem just, here's all the drums in stereo, here's the bass, here's just like, you know, instead of 20, 30, 40 tracks, here's like 4 stereo tracks, stems, and then you do your vocal overdubs. And that's how I've been doing it. So I still do it. I work with people all over the world this way. And what it allows, which I think is important, a lot of times, is a chance for it to sit. I just played on a record from Randy McStein, a brilliant artist who works with me a lot, but he asked me to play keyboards on something he's doing. And I'm like, oh, cool, okay. And I rarely do that. I don't do a lot of sessions just because I have so many of my own projects, but I did it. And I appreciated sort of sitting with it, because the way I work is I like to sit with it, really understand it. And the way I work is really kind of weird, because it's sort of like, if I want to do it, I'd do it for free. And then, but if someone was paying me and I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, because I really love the art of music and the inspiration. I think the only point in doing it is if you're inspired. And at that point, I'm happy to just do it. I mean, I'm not to say I do charge or trade or whatever, you barter, but I'm just saying it's kind of like, so that's how it was. I was like getting into it, I'm like, this is really good. And I'm thinking like, what can I do to be on the level or make it better? But anyway, so, you know, but I had that time. So if it was live, you know, but then again, if you're a jazz musician or other, you know, where you're improvising and things like that, it's different. And of course, obviously there is a beauty to the good old school ways of a bunch of people, musicians in a room all playing together. And I guess to replicate that would be a technical challenge. However, in my opinion, I'm not worried about that. That's sort of like a sacrifice right now that I already make, which is kind of like, if I want to work with Nick DiVirgilio, who's over in Indiana at Sweetwater, and him specifically, there's local drummers here, but even when we weren't in lockdown, if I want to work with him, I have to accept that he's there, I'm here, and we're going to send tracks. All right. So first of all, real quick, before we get cut off, I want to give away the second LMC. All right. So just to make sure that's done, so I don't, because that's, for them. So
that's why I went there earlier, because I thought you were doing them both at once. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. Easy question. Fun. And we mentioned it. Name one artist, band that Gavin has worked on in his career in mastering. We've mentioned a whole bunch. It doesn't have to be someone that he won a Grammy for, but and again, Rachel is going to pick somebody. She's going to tell me, as long as you're right and you're one of the people, you might win a Lurssen mastering console software.
Somebody there. See, I didn't get it. Now I get it. Now I get the rules. Somebody's looking at this and picking the winner. I get it. I get it now. I get it.
Sorry. Yes. So IK guitarist is the one waving, and that's Rachel this time. Sometimes it's Peter. Sometimes it's Rachel. Again, this is the IK Multimedia social team. I'm sort of an auxiliary part of the team. I'm a musician in the field. I have my own company, Sonic Reality, and I've partnered with IK since 2002, and I like to get involved in the production side, the artist side, the engineers, talking to engineers, working on presets, which, by the way, I'm working on presets for Sunset Sound Studio Reverb, which the last time I saw you, Joe Ciccarelli presets for Sunset Sound Studio Reverb. That's one of the things I'm working on, just to let people know. Buscemi, that's a good one. He said Dave Kersner. That's true.
Good.
But he doesn't qualify because he does work with IK. That's actually Peter. All right, we have a winner. And I don't know what the person said. Well,
well, let's check to make sure, because I saw Metallica, and I didn't work with Metallica, but my partner Ruben
exactly.
did. But our studio did.
I'm verifying right now. Just need to know what they said. So hold on a sec. We will find out. Pink Floyd, that works. Okay. And it's Nevin James. Congratulations, Nevin James. You won Lurssen Mastering Console. And all you have to do is DM IK Multimedia's Instagram. And at some point later today, you will get a download code or a serial code to download Lurssen Mastering Console. But again, I just want to say to everybody on that front, that everyone can download Lurssen Mastering Console and use it for free for 2 weeks. So you might as well do that and try it out. You'll see. I mean,
yeah, we put our heart and soul into it, so you'll really dig it.
Yeah, I think one of the things to again just even for people that, let's say, are engineers and they have their compressors and EQs and things that they use on them, for mastering. It's like, just try Lurssen Mastering Console, because I think for many different purposes, we've got 2 minute warning here. For many different purposes, it'll come in handy, even if you just want to quickly master something. Like, I need to send this off to someone and I just need it to sound like radio ready and like Record Pro, whatever. Run it through Lurssen Mastering Console. That was a nice clap, by the way. It works standalone for the Mac PC or as a plugin, so you can even just use it standalone, pull in the track, and just process it with it, and you're done.
And you can automate. So there's things where we boost the chorus and drop the verses and stuff like that. You can automate within the plugin to do that. We talked about that a little bit. We didn't really get into it, but that can be done very easily.
All right.
That can be done very easily.
I'm going to have Gavin back on the IK Live probably in a week or so, and we'll get into more details. I think this is fun. We can almost do this a couple times a month. And then maybe on our personal, if you follow me at Dave Kersner or Gavin Lurssen, on our personals, we'll probably do a little bit more just a general chat about music stuff. Catch me tomorrow at 4 p.m. with Elon Rubin from 9 Inch Nails on Studio Time with Squids, and we're going to go. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care, Gavin. Thanks, buddy.
See you, Dave. Thanks.